if I went on LinkedIn, without even trying, I had, like 2,000, right? Just because people, and I'm like, why am I trying to build this Instagram account? When I'm probably not even like an Instagram guy, I don't know. So then I said, okay, well, why don't I build on something I already have, which is LinkedIn, which is where the people who are, making decisions and that I want to reach are anyway, not my neighbor down the street that, could learn what I'm doing, with my kids or something like that. So I started really trying to be active on LinkedIn, and again, people, why are you showing up on LinkedIn? Why spend the time doing that and all that? It goes back to that 7-11-4 rule. That's one more touch point and one more way that you can connect with people, tell them what you're about. And, I've kind of come up with some things over time that I one of the barriers that I had with LinkedIn at first was I don't really like bragging about myself.
Have you ever wondered how successful architecture, engineering, and construction companies scale their business?
Or have you ever wanted guidance on how to get more growth, wealth, and freedom from your AEC company?
Well, then you're in luck. Hi, I'm Will Forat.
And I'm Justin Nagel, and we're your podcast hosts.
We interview successful AEC business leaders to learn how they use people, process, and technology to scale their businesses.
So sit back and get ready to learn from the industry's best. This is Building Scale.
Hey listeners, it's Will here. Our mission is to help the AEC industry protect itself by making technology easy. If you've ever listened to our show, then you know that the 3 pillars of scaling a business are people, process, and technology. So if you suspect technology is your weak link, then book a call with us to see where we can help maximize your company's IT and cybersecurity strategy. Just go to buildingscale.net/help.
Today's guest is Jeff Berglund, CEO of Berglund Construction. Jeff is the 4th generation leader of a 115-year-old family-owned firm founded in Chicago, 1911. Holy crap, that was a long time ago. Berglund Construction delivers approximately $300 million in annual construction and restoration work. The company operates across the Midwest and has completed projects in 13 states in 2025. Their work spans from commercial, healthcare, education, multifamily, civic, cultural institutions, along with a nationally significant historical preservation projects. The restoration group is nationally recognized for masonry restoration, terracotta repair, structural stabilization, facade restoration, and heritage conservation. As president, Jeff is driving a multi-year transformation of the business, expanding into new markets, modernizing systems, developing leadership, and positioning the company for the next generation. Beyond construction, Jeff is deeply involved in community development, including helping lead the $30 million Dunlin YMCA living campus, healthy living campus in his hometown of Chesterton, Indiana. He lives in Chesterton with his wife, 3 sons, and another child on the way, and is focused on building a multi-generational legacy of places that matter. And with all that said, Jeff, welcome to the show.
Excellent. Thank you, Justin. You said that very well. And yes, multi-generational. I think that probably will be a big thing we'll talk about today.
Yeah, that would sum it up when you talk about 115 years. You're the 4th generation, which is going to be a bunch of that. And well, it looks like you're making a little army of next generations. So that's always good too.
Yeah, somebody asked me if I have a succession plan, and I said, well, he was born 5 years ago. So
there we go. You got to start early. Everybody always starts late. You're just starting really early.
Yeah. So, but yes, it's great to be here. Thank you both for having me on, and thank you for doing this podcast. It's really great to have some champions for our industry looking at different facets of it. So I appreciate being here.
Yeah, absolutely. So I said all those nice things, but you tell us the real story. How did you get into construction? What did that look like in the 4th generation of it? And tell us about Berglund.
Sure. So our company was founded by my great-grandfather. He was a Swedish immigrant, came from Sweden to Chicago. As you noted, I live in Indiana, but I'm just kind of on the other side of the border where they're saying they're going to bring the Bears Stadium. I don't know. As a Northwest Indiana guy, I actually think I still want it in Chicago because, it just feels weird to have it over here. But yeah, so I live in Northwest Indiana, but our company was founded down on the southeast side of Chicago. My great grandfather started doing tuck pointing, masonry, repair, working on the side of buildings all around that area. And the company's grown and evolved and expanded over the years, obviously, but we've maintained that family ownership. I got into the business. I both kind of always knew I was going to be in the business. I got into college, had a little rebellious streak. I'm going to go explore some different options. I got into some other things, but then ultimately realized that the business was the right place for me. Got back involved about 15 years ago, and have been working throughout the different facets of our business ever since. And yes, just recently in this last year was named president of the company, as that transition from third to fourth generation now really starts.
Yeah, congratulations on that. That's a
Thank
big,
you.
big step in a never-ending story, perhaps for Berglund. Ever expanding story for sure.
Yeah, hopefully, as you said in the introduction, obviously I'm early in my tenure, but I think the things we're doing, the things we started to do under the third generation to make this transition happen are really the things that will set us up, for a fourth to a fifth generation and and onward from there, as we've really worked very hard to get our company structure, governance, strategy, systems all in place to facilitate this happening, and are coming out on the other side of it a much healthier company, I think. So that's been really fun to be a part of.
That's awesome. Well, let's talk about the transition itself, right? This is a big deal, but your company must be used to this. At least you've done it 3 times already. So what did it look like? What did that transition actually look like?
Yeah, it's kind of interesting because my dad, you said we've done this before. When my dad took over the business, my dad's name is Fred. Fred's father actually got very ill. He had lung cancer and passed away when Fred was about my age. I'm 37, so there really wasn't a transition, at least not in the sense that Norman, was gradually stepping away from the business. He was 68 years old, was a 6-pack a day smoker. And, sadly that caught up to him relatively early in late life. And so Fred, it all just landed on him, in his late 30s to take over, assume leadership and go. So, he himself has not really been through that kind of a transition. So this is, though we are an old company, we have passed the baton, figuring out how a family leadership transition really goes when you still have 2 family members very active in leadership and in the business is something somewhat new that we've been involved in. It's been a learning experience for me. It's been a great experience sitting down with Fred, with my dad, as we try to navigate this and figure out, how do we work together best collaboratively? How do we show up in the company? Things like that. And I think it's actually making our relationship stronger, not only in the company, but outside of the company as well, as we try to figure this out.
Well, that's a good thing. Getting a stronger relationship with dad is, nobody can complain about that.
Yeah. No, it's when you're sitting down and having real conversations about work and how you work together in areas where you felt misaligned and things like that. As adults, you don't always have to have those conversations with your dad, right? Because your dad, probably don't live in the same house anymore. You're not kind of dealing with stuff on a day-to-day basis. So your conversations can kind of be a little, possibly a little lighter and things like that. So, it's been really a great evolution in our relationship to work on this together. It's something that we can do together and figure out and come out on the other side stronger for. So that I've really enjoyed.
Well, relationships are very important. So what about the rest of your team? So you have a passion for people, or at least managing people in teams. What makes a great leader? What does that actually look like when we talk about people?
That's been a really interesting part of this journey, and figuring out myself and how I show up, and how in my role now, things that I used to do or I'm used to doing can show up differently, and how I set people up for success, how I think through issues. Just to give a simple example. Meetings. I think all good leaders have ideas about what good meetings look like, and what they want out of meetings, and how they should be run internally. And I realize there's like two things that a lot of leaders do, and this includes, I realized I was doing this myself with meetings. One is either you over script it. So you basically, write the whole agenda and you say, here's what you're going to say, and here's, how it's going to go, and here's how long. Or you do nothing and show up to the meeting. And then when it doesn't go like you wanted it to go, you just kind of hijack the meeting and, and take it in a direction that you want. And then, maybe you're critical after the meeting because, it wasn't doing the things that you do. Now, both those, you might get a result that you're satisfied with, but I think a truly good leader, and it's somebody who's leading a large organization, the words I keep telling myself are higher and earlier. The earlier I can get involved in things and setting standards and saying, here's what I would like to see. It gives other people an opportunity to be successful. It prevents what I'm talking about, where either I'm scripting every meeting or I'm going into meetings and being dissatisfied with how they're being run. And really it's about setting other people up for success, right? Because when you do that, if you're going to somebody a week in advance and saying, here's what I'd like to see, everybody feels better, at ease, the meeting runs well, you're happy, they're happy, you walk out. So that earlier, higher and earlier is the theme I keep kind of telling myself as I've transitioned into this role. And that's hard.
Yes, I completely agree. And I know the secret background to some of this might be EOS. An EOS level 10 meeting might come into play, because I hated meetings. I literally hated meetings. I worked at a law firm, and we had meetings, pre-meetings before the meeting, and then post-meetings after the meeting. So it was like every meeting was actually 3 meetings, and it was like, insanity. So I totally feel that. And then obviously a level 10 meeting through EOS is it's just structure, but not scripting every single piece.
Yes, we share a mutual admiration for EOS. And the thing about EOS that recently I've come to really appreciate, that I think I underplayed before, was the idea of how to create a team, how to work as a team, and how to think of yourselves as a team. Everybody uses that word, right? We're a team. We're, dear team, here's what I would like to, do. But what I've maybe we should just name it. We share an implementer who guides our EOS process at Berglund Construction with you all. His name is Dan Zawacki, and he's
the best.
He's amazing.
And the man.
He affectionately goes by the Lobster Man because he started Lobstergram, right? So we had a meeting with the Lobster Man the other day, and there was like 6 of us who came into that meeting. And, at some point he says, how have you guys been doing as a team? Or he asked some question about, working as a team. And one of the people in the room very perceptively raised their hand and said, well, I can't really speak about a team. I work over here. That guy over there works over there. And that guy over there works over there. And, this was a new group kind of coming together for the first time. So it wasn't a criticism by that person. So, the first 4 hours of the session were team health, right? And how we're doing as a team, and it really gave me this, like I said, this new appreciation for, if we don't even think of ourselves as a team, and we haven't taken the time to like build that and be like, yeah, we're all in this together. There's some really big problems that we're going to solve in these meetings. And, and if we can't say we're all doing it, we're all focused, and I'm helping him and he's helping me, we're not going to get anywhere. So I that part of it in my new role and how I make people feel is something I'm thinking a lot about, how to get there.
So I guess this would be a good natural transition to talk about handing over decision making, because that's a little bit of where this came from. New team because of transitioning into the new role. And my assumption is that there were other people that also transitioned, right? Left a gap for where you were at, as well as other people are probably looking to retire or looking to transition. And so you have kind of a new leadership team, or newer leadership team. Would that be a safe way of putting it?
Yes, you're correct. We've had new people stepping into roles.
So if you have new people stepping into roles, how long and what has to happen in a transition to go smoothly? How long was that actually being planned for? Like legitimately where steps were being taken, right? Not 5-year-old, Jeff, but when you were legitimately inside of the company and going, okay, in order to hand over the reins or whatever how did that conversation go and where did it start?
Well, when I look back at when we first started working with the Lobster Man, he had us do the accountability chart, which for those not familiar, the accountability chart is you map out your organization, you put no names in the chart first, and you just put the functions, and then you think about the names, right? So when we did that, and I at that time I was on the leadership team with 3 core members that have been part of Fred's leadership team, my dad's leadership team, for literally decades. And when we did that exercise, we realized that their names were each in like 6 boxes, they never thought about it that way. I had never thought about it that way, that, they're filling all these roles. But when he just asked the question, like, who leads sales for the whole company? Who leads operations? Who's your HR, person, right? And these guys' names are popping in again and again and again.
Everyone.
You start to appreciate, like, wow, number one, they're wearing so many hats, right? But there's a real opportunity here because as we transition to this next phase of generational leadership, it doesn't have to be that because Fred's name was in these boxes. Now Jeff's name is in these boxes, right? There's an opportunity to say, well, Jeff, you're here, but somebody else should be in this box that Fred had, So in some ways you say it might take 3 people to replace 1, but that's how you grow and that's how you build a scalable organization. And that moment and that realization for us was huge. And we've been taking, really seriously that whole accountability chart, forward looking, who's doing what, who's, ever since that day, because I think without that exercise, we would have never wound up where we are today, where we're not only transitioning, but we're also growing and scaling at the same time. That's a tough dance to do, but also it can work out well if you do it deliberately.
So why don't we talk about, fast forward a little bit. How long, so we're talking years or months, how long was the actual planning for you to step into the role that you were in? Or was there any planning?
Well, there was, I would say the planning really came together when we started working down the pathway of EOS. And that was about 2.5 years ago. Now, there was always a thought process. So my dad is turned 65 last year, and he had always identified that as the year that he wanted to make this transition happen. And we didn't necessarily do it for this reason, but I just think we really lucked out that about 2.5 to 3 years ago, we started down this path of, working with EOS. I've suggested it to other people who are going through because I just don't know how we would have done it, at least as successfully as we had we not been going down that path. We actually had it as a company goal. So in the EOS world, you set company goals every year. We had a company goal last year that we communicated at the end of 2024, that by the end of 2025, the leadership transition would be complete, or at least it would be announced and people would be in their seats. And what that did for us is that really lit a fire under our asses, because if you're going in front of the company and you're saying on a regular basis, right, hey, we're going to make this transition happen, and you get to, and everyone's wondering, I wonder what's it going to be, and how, how's it going to go? And, you better not get to the end of the year and go, just kidding. Right. So that kind of putting that out there, I think made us all feel like we better figure this out, because if we don't, the whole company is going to think, these guys don't have their shit together. So that was really good.
Public accountability.
Put a little pressure on the situation.
Yeah, it really did.
Speaking of pressure, so prior to this transition to happen, what were you doing in the company?
I've had the chance to work in a lot of different roles in the company. And, I've had two that I think were really formative for me. One was, I managed a really large project in Columbus, Ohio. And, that project was formative for a couple of reasons. One, I was working, in a remote geography. So I didn't have we didn't at that time have an office there. So I didn't have like the corporate backstop or, the ability to walk in somebody's office and ask all these questions all the time. I had to figure a lot out myself. It was a really challenging project. And one of my ambitions is to grow geographically our company, because I think there's some special things we do that are valuable for other markets. So that was very formative for me to go out to a new market, figure out how to, hire a bunch of local people, train them, get them all on the same page, and deliver. It was a $23 million project on the state office tower for the state of Ohio. And we were also a subcontractor to Turner Construction on that project. Another reason that was very formative, their team was awesome. And so I guess, shout out to Turner, but the team that managed us had the best project manager I've ever worked under. And they really taught me a lot. It was kind of a humbling experience where it's like, you guys think you're really good. We're going to question you every single day. You're not going to walk down this hallway without giving me a written plan, that you're going to start with your right foot or your left foot and you're going to stop here. So their level of planning, their level of risk management was unbelievable. So I learned a ton there. And then the other experience I had not too long after that, I moved back to my hometown where I live today, Chesterton, Indiana, where we have a smaller satellite office. At least at the time, it was pretty small. It was just sort of happenstance that I decided to move there. Our leader of that office was headed toward retirement himself. Had about a year left, but kind of wanted to stop doing the head of office activities. And so I got the chance to step in, be an office lead, and start really developing a team out here, and make a big impact in the market. And this is where I really learned business development and sales, and really gained an appreciation for that, and how to take that to the next level for our company. So, I've worked in all divisions. I've worked as a tradesperson. I've worked as a project manager. I've worked in some estimating. I've been an office leader. I've worked in remote. So I feel very fortunate that I've had this kind of wide experience throughout the company and picked up a lot along the way.
Actually, this is a good place to actually ask. Are you saying that you learned sales and BD there, or do you have any other experiences with sales and BD?
Well, that I had taken a class. I have an MBA from Kellogg Northwestern, and phenomenal school. And I took a sales class at that school from a great professor named Craig Wortman, and he literally had us write the business development playbook for how you would grow your business. So I wrote that. I didn't really have a use for it at the time, but then I showed up in Northwest Indiana, and as I'm sort of looking at the office, and we have a great person doing our pre-construction. We have a great operations team, but our presence in the market was pretty poor. And, I start going to events, and I'm seeing all of our competition out at this event, that event. And, I think there was kind of a feeling at the time like there was some secret sauce that some of our competition had that we didn't have. And, well, their secret sauce was, they were just showing up. So I realized that was a gap I could fill. And so I started just trying to beat them, trying to show up places, trying to be, and really not just from a sales perspective, because one of the things that I think really needs to be appreciated about construction, our sales process is long, it's complicated. We're asking people to trust us with a lot of money, a lot of risk. And so, I'm not just selling you a t-shirt where, hey, buy my t-shirt and you hand me $10. You're going to work throughout an entire year alongside our team just to get from pre-construction to a contract. And then you're probably going to work with us for 2 more years. So really trusting, really getting to know who we are, what we stand for, what we're about, who I am, and what I'm about, and hopefully that's reflected in the company, is just critically important in this whole picture of how you get someone to entrust you with that kind of risk, that kind of money, and their hopes and dreams for their project.
Let's dig slightly deeper in this BD sales piece. So you move to northwestern Indiana. And you say, hey, retirement is happening. I'm going to take over this shop. We're going to do what? We're going to shake hands, kiss babies. What are we doing there to get the business?
Well, I there's a really good book that I recommend called Oversubscribed by Daniel Priestley.
Okay.
And Daniel Priestley has this rule he calls the 7-11-4 rule. And he says this rule is what it takes to get somebody to entrust you with a purchasing decision. And what that stands for is they have to get to know you for 7 hours of time across 11 different interactions across 4 different platforms. So 7 total hours of time interacting with you, 11 different touch points. And then the 4 different platforms, is like, well, hey, if somebody listens to this podcast that I'm on, that's one platform, right? And by the way, that's, an hour of time or whatever somebody spent. Maybe then I go to lunch with them. There's another platform and another hour, right? And maybe they see me at an event and that's 15 minutes, right? But that's another. So if you think about your own purchasing decisions, what I realized was that's kind of the process that I go through is for something significant. If you're going to buy a car, you're going to, read online about it. You might listen to a podcast about it. You might go to the dealership, test drive it, talk to a few friends who have, you're going to have like that number of touch points to get there. So what I realized was, I would hear a lot like, well, hey, we know that this potential client has a big project, and we just had a great meeting with them. It was phenomenal, and we're perfectly situated for that project. And the RFP comes out in a year, so we're really happy we had that meeting, and we think we can win in a year, and that would be it, right? And well, meanwhile, somebody else is boom, 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 boom all that year long. The RFP comes out, and you're not there. And what they're doing, is generating trust, right? They're by showing up repeatedly. They're saying, you can trust me with this decision. You know who I am. You've seen me in a lot of different aspects. Hopefully you validated me in some fashion. And so that's what I tried to do. I tried to hit that 7-11-4 rule with as many people as I possibly could.
That's awesome. I've never heard this 7-11-4, but I've heard variants of X amount of times, X amount of interactions, different places, but 7-11-4, I love that. That's awesome.
Yeah. Well, that's, intuitively, that's probably why you guys have a podcast, right? It's one more touch point for you, for people to hear. So
completely different platform, interacting with people in a different way. Yeah, no question.
Yeah. And events, right? I mean, I would go to a lot of events, and I remember, sometimes people say, well, why would we go to events? I go to an event and, I drink, I have, 5 whiskeys and I go home. And,
it's a good event. Oh man.
Yeah.
I love those events.
Whatever, whatever it is. Number one, that my professor at Kellogg said, are you at an event to drink or are you at an event to work? And you got to make that decision, right? But what does it mean to work? It means that you're trying to, get in front of the right people, have the right conversations, and make it another touch point for people to get to know you along the way.
Love that.
So, can you quantify the work that you did, right, in the sort of the office? I think you took over an office. Can you quantify a little bit of like what you did, what you had to do, and to become successful? Because you did a whole bunch of work, but I know plenty of people that have done a whole bunch of work, but they haven't actually been able to quantify into anything.
Well, I mean, I guess the most basic metric, if you said, well, what, was it successful? We were averaging about $12 million in revenue in this office prior to when I started getting engaged. this year we're doing about $55 million in revenue. Next year we're doing about $75 million in revenue. And that was 2022 when I showed up here. So it's a pretty short amount of
3 years
time,
ago.
but the thing was, this is not a story really about me. The story is there was a great team, very talented. I'm not the project. I did not serve as the project manager. I did not serve as the pre-construction. It's not that I came out here and revolutionized what they were doing. I just went out and said, hey, this is who we are. These are our values. This is what we're about. And we would love to, work for you on your project. And so, in some ways my job was easy, right? I just had to tell the story. If the office was, otherwise a shit show and I had to come out here and fix everything, right? That'd be a harder sell, but we had the pieces. We just weren't out there telling the story.
Yeah, I think pretty much anybody, the quick math could say, yeah, that was successful. 3 years with almost a 3
quadruple. Yeah,
it's insane.
So
5x. That's really bad math.
Oh yeah, it is bad math. Both of us.
Almost 5x. That's crazy.
So, what pieces did you learn? So there's a lot of different pieces to sales, right? So you learned networking. You sort of went through the. Did you actually create a process around networking, or is it just more? It's conducive just to the individual.
Well, I've learned a variety of different things. Like one thing, a lot of people don't like cold calling, right? And in our industry, is it worth it to make a list of 200 people and go down the list and call them? I could see it either way, but I do cold call, and my cold calling is it's targeted. I reach out to people I've never met before, and I try to have a meeting with them. And the thing I tell our team now that are doing a lot of business development sales, I'll hear a lot, well, I sent that guy one email, right? And I haven't heard back, and a month has gone by, and I'm like, you're probably going to have to find like
10 more interactions. There needs to be 10 more.
But to even get that meeting, right? Because we're all busy. We're all getting a lot of emails, maybe pick up the phone and call. And also find something, that this is, sort of common things that people say, but find something valuable that you can offer that individual in exchange for your time. And it doesn't have to be, the most, valuable offer in the world. And I think people kind of overthink that too, like what's valuable or what's not, hey, we're doing a project similar. Love to tell you about it. I'm very passionate about a lot of the community-based type projects, nonprofits, and I'm very genuinely like if I know about a project that sounds really cool, I try to get involved beyond just like being the construction manager. So a lot of my outreach will be about that. Hey, I'd love to find a way to support your project beyond just being the builder and I care about where I live. I care about the community, and maybe there's a way that I can help. So stuff like that goes a long way toward people saying yes, other than just, hey, I'm a construction guy. I want to build your project. Can I come in and tell you about my company?
So definitely, thank you for the examples. And kind of sharing, because I think people do overthink it. Look, I think I'm in that boat. I sometimes overthink that aspect too. And I think just examples of like what people are really saying yes to is really helpful. So thank you for that. Do you do anything else? Like, so there's the sales side. Did everything you do relate to sales, or did you do anything around marketing?
Well, another thing, with that 7-11-4 thing that we talked about was I started being more active on LinkedIn. And, it was kind of funny because I had this idea that I was going to grow my Instagram account. I don't know why, and I had people comment to me like, oh, I really see you're trying on Instagram. Well, I had like 150 connections. If I went on LinkedIn, without even trying, I had, like 2,000, right? Just because people, And I'm like, why am I trying to build this Instagram account? When I'm probably not even like an Instagram guy, I don't know. So then I said, okay, well, why don't I build on something I already have, which is LinkedIn, which is where the people who are, making decisions and that I want to reach are anyway, not my neighbor down the street that, could learn what I'm doing, with my kids or something like that. So I started really trying to be active on LinkedIn, and again, people, why are you showing up on LinkedIn? Why spend the time doing that and all that? It goes back to that 7-11-4 rule. That's one more touch point and one more way that you can connect with people, tell them what you're about. And, I've kind of come up with some things over time that I one of the barriers that I had with LinkedIn at first was I don't really like bragging about myself. And it feels weird to go on here and just be like, hey, our company is great because we did this, or I'm great because I did that. And so what I've told people in our company, because I think, culturally, that's how we are. We're just a little bit close to the vest. Don't brag about yourself, brag about your clients. Go on there and say, hey, my client, look at what this really cool thing my client's doing, and I'm proud to support it as construction manager. And I think flipping that paradigm a little bit helps because of course you want to brag about your clients. Of course you want to say the great things that they're doing and how you're supporting it, as opposed to the great things that you yourself are doing.
That's good insight there. I think that plays well, especially in the construction space, because it's just cool things that people are building, right? Like it's just like,
yeah,
and it is collaborative.
If you think about it, if somebody is building a project that we're building, kind of by definition, like they're spending, millions of dollars. And so that they must be doing something cool as an organization, and so, and it also, I think, promotes our team to learn more about their clients. I've walked some job sites in the past and said, what's the client using the space for? And, sometimes the project team doesn't know, right? And that's a problem. They should know beyond the drawings what they're doing. So understanding that, promoting that, right? And it also says something to prospective clients that hey, these people really care about their clients and they really are celebrating their clients. And wouldn't it be cool if I was a client that they wanted to celebrate? So it kind of has that second order effect too.
Love hearing that. That's a great way to really celebrate. I mean, it's a very community type of way of going about really celebrating achievements.
The other thing I tell people too is like mix in some personal things, because back to this trust thing, you don't, if your LinkedIn feed is all about you personally, that's going to get old, right? Put that on Facebook, but every now and then, something about your hobbies, your kids, whatever, because, it goes back to this thing of getting people to know you, get to trust you, showing up different ways. If I know that you're not just one dimensional and you have these other interests, I'm just going to trust you more. I'm going to be like, that's a human, So I've noticed that I try not to like use my kids as clickbait, but I'm proud to be an involved dad, and I try to involve my kids even in my work sometimes, even though they're very young. And any time that I post about that, like the likes are going through the roof, right? But, if I did that all the time, people would be like, all right, Jeff, we get it. You got cute kids, but every now and then you drop something like that. Hey, I'm a dad. I just like you, right? It's something I'm proud about. And it kind of allows people another avenue to get to know me a little more.
I completely agree with you. I could say the most insightful business thing ever, and people will like it. But then if I talk about the Tank Man in any way, it's like, oh my goodness, this is the greatest human ever.
Yes.
So yeah, no, I see that frequently because he comes up in my gratitude posts pretty much every week, or in a good succession of that. And yeah, no, cute picture of Franklin. Holy crap, man. It is clickbaitish, which I've then thought about. I'm like, I should probably do this less. But then I'm like, I don't know. I am grateful for this. I got to just be me. Got to have authentic. So,
well, one point on the clickbait thing though, that I think is also important is it makes me feel good to get a lot of likes and a lot of engagement with a post, but engagement with a post, it's kind of a mistake to think that engagement with a post means that you have a good presence, right? And I'm not. I like your posts actually. You're round up with your kids,
Yeah.
but the other thing I see too is people think, well, I got to hit a home run every time. If I don't. If I don't put this thing out and it doesn't, I only get 5 likes, like that's a failure. And actually, consistency matters more, right? And it goes back to this thing of, hey, if you're going to get to know me, like, you should see me consistently, not once every 6 months I put something out there that gets a lot of engagement. And a lot of times, like, just showing up in people's feed, even if they don't react to what you're saying, helps you a lot. Right. And sometimes like business type posts aren't going to get the most activity, but the fact that they read it and that's why you follow up with the kid one, right? Because, okay, now, I'm staying in the algorithm, I'm staying relevant, right? But the thing I really want to tell you is that I would love to be your partner for this thing. And here's why. And, and then I get my 30 likes on that. Right.
Oh yeah.
No,
that's
I love
awesome.
that.
What about mentorship? Obviously, your dad must have taught you some things about your role, but what does mentorship look like, the coaching journey in the company as a whole?
Mentorship has been really important for me. And I've been, I guess, accidentally intentional about setting that up. So I say accidentally because I didn't go out systematically and say, I need this, I need that, I need that. But I realized, like, for example, about a year ago, that I wanted to coach, and that I was, as you rise up the ranks, there's fewer people that can advise you on things or that you want to go to on things because, you're dealing with issues that that very few people should even be brought in on in the first place, right? And so I found a coach in a very roundabout way. His name is Smith Holland. He's with CEO Coaching International. And that relation, I hired him. He's a formal coach. I think people are hesitant to do that sometimes because it feels like being a leader or something is like an ineffable quality that you have, and you should just, sort of either you know how to show up and be a good leader or you don't, right? And you're born that way or not. And it's not like coaching like somebody in basketball or something like that. But I want to be the best leader, best president that I could be in the company. And I know that I got a lot to learn. So having those types of relationships. So I say I've kind of built this thing because, I have Dan, the Lobster Man, is our EOS implementer. He's turned out to be a great mentor for me and somebody I call informally. I imagine you guys maybe do the same.
Yep.
Yeah.
I have Smith as a CEO coach. Our CFO is somebody who spans my generation and Fred's generation. His name is Kevin, and Kevin's really embraced mentoring me. Meets with me weekly, goes over things, is kind of playing that key role in this transition. So I find I have almost like this personal board of advisors, and it's been really important for me, and I think going forward, I know that I can be better. I know I can get better, and I every day I'm realizing things where I'm falling short, and if I didn't have that type of support, I know I wouldn't advance.
It's funny because people, obviously sports gets, people compare sports to life or business, and nobody critiques the fact that like Michael Jordan has like 5 coaches.
Yeah.
It's just like, you have a shooting coach, you have dribbling coach, you have Phil Jackson, you have like, health coach, like same thing with LeBron, right? Like, so you have all these coaches, and it's like, well, yeah, how do you think they got as great as they got? Like, it wasn't like I just was born to be the greatest. It was like, I worked unbelievably hard and I used other people's knowledge to really, get those facts in there. So, I think a business coach or a CEO coach, as you have, like those are things that to me make sense. Like, how do I get better at something? Well, I got to use somebody else to help me, even if it's just holding accountability of things, right? It's like we might know similar things, but like seeing it when it's your business compared to outside of the business, working on the business compared to in it, such a different look at things that you just get such a fresh view of things that really make a massive difference.
I'll give you an example of recently with the coach. So, I'm somebody, I kind of live in my head a lot, and I like to think things through, and I like to make things perfect before I put them out in the world. If I say things like, here's my idea, and I've already thought of all 25 angles of this idea, right? Before I put it, because, I guess maybe it's kind of a vulnerability thing or whatever, right? If you're putting something out. And I've had some comments of people, say to me, and it was kind of puzzling to me, like, at times you're not very warm, or, you don't say hi or whatever. And they interpreted my being stuck up in here at times with like, a reflection on how I feel about them, which I feel very bad about because it's not what I intend. And I was talking to to Smith, my coach, about this, and he said, well, what do you feel didn't go well last year in the company? And I explained something to him, and he said, have you communicated that to people, that here's what you would like to see different, here's the thing? And I said, well, no, because, I haven't fully done this study to really figure this thing out and, be able to share it. And he's like, well, Jeff, I think you've got a lot up here and you like to be 100% done up there before you get it out. But that actually creates a bad dynamic for people that you work with. And as a leader, you need to get to 50%. That's all get the direction, right? The vision, the idea, and then let other people in, and let them feel good about helping you get it from 50% to 100%. And that was really a light bulb moment for me to go, well, I need to start doing that. I need to let people in. I need to let people know where I stand, because they're kind of guessing, right? That comment of, hey, I'm not always sure where that's kind of what that is, right? You're kind of quiet. You walk by, you're not, communicating, and, it's like you're too much up here, right? Get it out. Let people in. Let them know what you're thinking and how they can help you get there.
Yeah, and it allows them to build it with you.
And it allows them to build it with you.
Then you have full connection. Right? We talk about team health. It's like, well, if we build the idea together, I am so much more motivated to make sure that idea works in comparison to, like, here's the idea, go execute it. It's just
accountability, but yes, all that trust.
Oh, yeah.
That I love that exercise. I'm sure you guys have done it with the trust pyramid, and that,
oh yeah,
or the team health pyramid. Oh, yeah. And that first thing is trust, and it comes from that book,
Five Dysfunctions
of the Team. Thank you. Right. And what I love in there is he says, there's two kinds of trust. There's trust that I think that you will do what you say you're going to do, which I think most people in our company believe that. We're all sort of competent professional people. If I ask you to do something, probably you're going to do it. Then the other side of the coin is, if you say something to me that's an out there idea or a vulnerability or whatever, I'm not going to turn around and say, you're an idiot, or well, I can't believe, or I'm not going to hear that and go and tell other people, I can't believe Justin told me that. What an idiot for, sharing that with me. Right. And that's kind of what we're talking about, is how, with this whole out of your head, put ideas forward, being a little vulnerable, right? It's saying, hey, let's develop that trust and be able to move forward and, work together and feel good about that. So, keep going up the ladder.
Boy,
yeah,
Jeff,
absolutely.
you do not realize how similar you and I are. You basically, Justin, if you did not hear the voice, how similar did what he just say in like the past 10 minutes sound like me? I live in my head.
So give me
I was
your
in
spin on it,
Chicago,
okay?
I was in Chicago 2 weeks ago, and me and Will had a conversation almost verbatim about this issue of saying, like, hey, you got to bring us with on the ideas. Will's our visionary. He's out there, and like, he tries to go through the process, and it's like, But if you don't bring us in soon enough, it's like it creates that that friction, right? Like that's essentially what happens, and it's misguided friction, right? It's not like, oh, you're being mean or you're just being a tyrant or anything like that. It's just more of like, yeah, we're human beings, so we can only respond the way human beings respond. So yeah, when you were saying this, Jeff, I was like, oh my god, we literally just had this conversation.
So how did that land with you, Will, when you heard that feedback?
So working on communication, like clear, concise communication, is something that I think is like an ever going process. I've never been perfect at it. I'm far from it, right?
Did you used to think you were good at communication?
I don't think so.
Until I heard this kind of feedback. Anyway, keep going. But that's been an interesting thing.
No, because I also had a nickname, Once Upon a Time Will. So,
Tell a long story, I'll tell you that.
and so I already knew that I wasn't the greatest at communication. So I didn't have any, we'll say, cognitive dissonance around that. However, when it came to like including people, when it came to like ideas and when I think my biggest issue is when to include them, because I generate 1,000 ideas an hour, right? And I don't always consciously think about how long have I spent on this thought or this sort of idea to mold it into something. And at what point should I include the team versus this idea is only half-assed, it's half thought out. Maybe I should think about it a little bit more. That's the problem that I have, is that I definitely spent too much time on certain ideas without involving certain, members of the team going, hey, what do you think about this? And going, well, what about this? What about this? Like actually spending a little bit of time on it, because when I spend too much time on it, they're thinking that I've made already assumptions or I've already made the decisions on those, when I'm really looking for the feedback. And I've kind of thought about crossing off certain things on the list that like I logically concluded, oh, it doesn't make sense to go down these paths. These 3 paths out of the 10 or 15 that I thought through, these 3 seem to be the best fit, which might not be entirely true, but it seemed best fit based on my perception, right? Sure. So it's a work in progress for me. And it's super hard. And trying to be like clear and concise in that conversation and like giving them the context without giving them the world. Like we don't have 24 hours to talk about this. Yeah. That's the other part, is like, what contextuals are important to this conversation versus what can I leave off, right? And without calling it ChatGPT, but I'm trying to give you the least amount of context and try to get you to decide on something, right?
Or get narrating your decisions, right? That's something I remember. I had a meeting one day with people and I was telling them something, and I had literally hired a firm to do a study. So I had a study, and I was giving them the meta reason why I did the study in the first place, and then what the results of the study were, and then the iteration of it, and I like patted myself on the back, man, you killed that meeting. And then I called the guy like a week later and I said, hey, have you made any progress on this? And he goes, to be honest with you, I ended that meeting and I had no idea what to do. And I was like, really? I gave you like, the encyclopedia, but it occurred to me that it just confuses people, right? You're trying to trying to bring people in, but you're the leader, right? Here's some things, here's what I'm trying to communicate. I don't have it solved either, but that's literally like one of the main things I'm thinking about right now and that's when I go back to where I started about hiring earlier, right? Because I think, like you said, it creates friction. You jump in late, you have all these ideas. It's not, you don't like how something went. And if you really want to be a good leader and really set the team up for success, the higher you can get involved, or the earlier you can get involved at a higher altitude, the better. And the fact that that's really hard work, I think, is also underappreciated for, leadership. We're starting this, as part of this transition, we're starting a board, and the board members the advisory board members are my dad and 2 of his key leaders, one of which is transitioning out. And they're used to day-to-day being operators, and I think they're trying to figure out, or it's early. We've had one board meeting, Like, what is my role? And I'm like, be as early as you can and tell us when we're gonna run off the road and, you know, make a big mistake. That's your role. And I think at first glance, it's like, well, that sounds like not a lot, you know. But I mean, literally, if you could see into the future and help guide us in a way that we don't fall on our faces and make good decisions and you know, be successful and all that, like, I can't think of a more important thing that anybody could do, you know, for the health of the company and the team.
Oh yeah.
So just to close that loop, because I have used something that helps me, I just don't always remember to use it, which is either when I'm asking, like, if you want to fast forward to the end of this meeting, what would you like to have accomplished? Or for me, if I'm speaking, I don't always use it, but I do really like using it, which is, if we're gonna fast forward to the end of this meeting, this is what I would like you to have captured or would like you to have understood, right? And then give the context.
I think that's excellent. You know, there's a lot of I'm gonna, you know, write that down and use it. There's a lot. I was thinking about this the other day. Sorry, it's kind of tangentially related, but you know, the Ben Johnson thing, right? The good, better, best. Never let it rest till your good is better. You know, and your better is best. That's on every sign in Chicago right now, and my 5-year-old son can, and my 3-year-old sons can reiterate it. And you know, I heard that thing forever ago. And when I first heard him in a locker room and like chanting that, I'm like, that's kind of corny, you know, like that you're like in a room with a bunch of grown men and that's your chant, you know. But what I was thinking about, and you talking about, you know, how you can use certain, like, be explicit up front and like say what you want to say, and sometimes even in a way that feels uncomfortable. Like, wow, what a thing that has taken off in terms of communication and how people feel about the team and how the locker room has responded. And, you know, and then you had me sitting over going, what a corny ass guy to be, you know, saying that, right? And how wrong I was. So, I mean, I you know, those kinds of explicit communications and getting out, you know, saying things that don't always feel natural, you know, I think that's a big part of it.
Sans the pulling off the shirt, right?
Yeah, well, I mean, that's
Got to feed the people of Chicago from Wiener Cycle. That makes sense.
you know, I mean, he's really an interesting case study, you know, overall. He's Ben Johnson. He's kind of around, you know, late 30s, right? And taking on this leadership role. And I saw like a funny spoof of him, which is he sits there on the sidelines and he doesn't react to anything, right? It could be, you know, whatever's going on. And then he goes into the locker room, right? And he's F the Packers, ripping his shirt off. Yeah, good, better, best, you know. And like his whole personality changes. But you know, it reminds me of this conversation we're having about vulnerable leadership, right? He's like, yeah, he's this stoic guy, you know, in the moment, but he's in there with his guys at the end, and he's going, yeah, you know, we're all in this together, and we did this, and you know, and I'm right there with you saying F the Packers, and you know, and you know, it allows people to come in and be part of it, right?
Yeah, I love the connection of sports and business, because I do think there's so much truth to that, where it's like, what did he do? He came and changed the culture. That's essentially what he did. Obviously, new scheme, right? So, you have a different strategy. Makes sense. But like the culture component, the people component to that, such a difference in 1 year. And I think that plays true. So sometimes that direct communication, to your point of saying like, we want to go from good to better to best. Like, even though that sounds corny at times, if you keep saying the same thing over and over again and people buy into it, man, you can take over the world. Like, that's how it works out. Well, one of the things, and I'm sure you guys do this too, is have a theme every year. Like, what's the yearly theme that you have? Because what we found is like, how do you really, really focus on something? We'll have a theme for the year. And every week we mention our commitment to each other. All the leadership team has a commitment that we're committing the whole year, as well as that yearly theme for the company as a whole. And like, those are things that it seems silly, but yet those move the needle without question.
That's a great point. And yeah, and those things you take for granted, that, you know, like the core values, right? It's great that EOS forces you to say what those core values are at least once a quarter in your quarterly address, right? And talk about them and champion them and celebrate them. And I remember when we first started, and we had core values, and the Lobster Man was like, "Hey, we're going to revisit those," and I'm like, "Really?" And we did change them, and we made them more about the DNA of the company than they were. And I asked someone the other day, if they know them all and stuff like that, and people do, but I mean, you're hiring new people every day. You have people working in remote geographies who you're not seeing all the time. And then, there's multiple layers to that whole thing, right? Your core values, your core focus, your 10-year target, your 3-year target. It's amazing how much people can get. You think that you're being very clear on these things, and then someone sends you a plan, and you realize that certain things you were saying just didn't land, or they make a comment in a meeting, and you go, God, we've talked about this not being the right fit for us or whatever, based on our core values, our core focus. And, here's someone surfacing again. Right. And, you just can't communicate it enough.
This was also a conversation that we had in our 2-day annual with Dan. So focus, super important. Absolutely. I don't want to hammer through that, but we're probably just about at time here. Will, you want to hit it with the last question?
Yeah. Love asking this question because it's the one that we ask everyone. If you're to go back 20 years, what would you tell yourself? What advice would you give your 20-year previous self, right? This could be both business and personal.
I think what I would tell myself is keep moving forward and don't spend much time looking in the rearview mirror. And the reason I say that is, especially, so I'm 37, I was 17. And, at that point in your time, life decisions can feel heavy. You can feel like, your decision to do this, go to this college or study this thing or pick this course, has a lot of bearing. And I think as you move through life, one of the most important things is being able to just keep going and just make the next decision, and don't spend too much time, on why you did that, or looking to trying to go back in time, and just deal with what's in front of you and make the next choice. And if you do that, and you keep looking ahead, I think you end up in a good place.
I love that.
Oh, yeah.
Great advice.
Yes, absolutely. This has been a ton of fun. I'm going to throw all your social and all that stuff in the show notes. But if somebody wanted to get a hold of you, what's the best way for them to do that, Jeff?
Well, I talked a lot about LinkedIn, so connect with me on LinkedIn, or I'd love to see what other people are up to on there, and hopefully some of the things that we're doing shine through as well.
Awesome. And is there anything else you'd like to tell the people before we say goodbye?
I just say thank you again. Thank you very much for having me. Thanks for championing our industry and bringing people on to share their perspectives. I'm not aware of another podcast that does this, so I'm really grateful you guys do it.
Awesome.
Well, thank you
so much. This has been a ton of fun, listeners. If you haven't gotten that from the laughs and giggles, certainly on my behalf. And until next time, adios.
All right. Bye, guys. Thank you.
Thanks for listening to Building Scale. To help us reach even more people, please share this episode with a friend, a colleague, or on social media.
Remember, the 3 pillars of scaling a business are people, process, and technology.
And our mission is to help the AEC industry protect itself by making technology easy.
So if you think your company's technology pillar could use some improvement, book a call with us to see how we can help maximize your IT and cybersecurity strategy. Just go to buildingscale.net/help.
And until next time,
Keep building scale.
Scale.